Hey kids, it's Mr. Fly here, hope you're well, and welcome back to Bike News, the monthly look back at what's been going on in the world of motorcycles here in the UK, this time for the month of May that has already flashed by. So I've got 4 MCNs to go through, grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee and let's crack on. Right, welcome back to the channel folks, and without further ado, let's see what's been going on in the bike news world for the last month, eh? And first thing, 20 isn't plenty. This is a good news story, particularly if you're in Wales. It says here, Welsh roads could soon be back up to speed following a policy U-turn. Do you remember we spoke a few bike newses ago that, well, in fact it was last year, that basically there was going to be pretty much a blanket 20 mile an hour speed limit throughout Welsh villages, and whilst I can sort of see that through villages it's not necessarily a problem, it did cause quite a stir and quite a lot of people aren't very happy about it. Well, it seems like bit of a U-turn on that. So it says here, good news for motorcyclists in Wales because the 20 mile an hour blanket speed limits imposed last year across swathes of urban areas are facing a complete rethink. Hurrah! Speaking in the Senedd on April the 23rd, Cabinet Secretary for North Wales and Transport, Ken Skates, said the Welsh Government continues to believe that 20 miles an hour is the right speed limit. Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? However, what I'm doing now, he said, is listening to what people want for the roads and pressing ahead with refining the policy. Oh, it's a little policy refinement, good one. Tony Campbell, CEO of the Motorcycle Industry Association, said, finally the Welsh Government sees sense in reviewing the 20 mile an hour speed limit and is reverting back to 30 miles an hour. Don't get too excited yet though, because Skates, the minister, said he outlined that there was going to be a 3-stage plan for new limits with revised guidance promised by summer of this year. So hopefully, very soon indeed, we'll have some revised guidance. I don't know if that means it will be moved into law and those 20 mile an hour speed limits will be replaced again with 30s or what. But basically, fingers crossed, good news for those of us that love riding in Wales. Maybe by this time next year, we'll be back to something a little bit more normal. Last time I rode in Wales, which I love doing, it's a fantastic place to take a motorcycle. The issue was not so much the 20 mile an hour speed limit, but the changes all the time. So you'd be in a 40 that went to a 30, that went to a 20, that went back to a 30, and so it went on. And forever, you're just looking at your speed all the time, worried that you're going to break the speed limit rather than paying attention to what's going on the road. So yeah, it would be good to get a little bit of uniformity back on the roads in Wales and elsewhere for that matter as well. So yeah, that is good news. Right, next story then. Warning, drivers on drugs. We will get onto some actual motorbikes, but I just thought I'd mention this because this is something that I've noticed a lot more on my bike as I've been riding around. And this is a bit of a whiff of weed as you're riding along. Now, I was out on my bike on Tuesday with some pals, didn't take the cameras out, but we just went out for a nice ride, out for lunch. And there was out into sort of Oxfordshire and West Berkshire. And around about the place, you could just smell cannabis coming out of people's cars. I, for one, don't like this. I don't much like the smell of it. I'm not an old fuddy-duddy. I get that, people smoke drugs, whatever. If that's your bag, fine. But I just don't like it when they're doing it at the wheel. It's, tantamount to being the same thing, in my mind, as being a drunk driver. It's not going to make you pay attention, and I don't want to be on my motorbike around drivers that aren't paying attention. Anyway, it says here, new data reveals over a fifth of young drivers are happy to drive after taking Class A drugs. This is pretty shocking to me. A survey of more than 2,000 UK drivers has revealed that 22% aged between 17 and 34 think it's okay to get behind the wheel of a car after taking Class A drugs. Drivers of all ages were asked, how acceptable do you personally feel it is for a driver to drive using Class A drugs such as cocaine and ecstasy? This isn't even weed, this is the hard stuff. With 13% across all age brackets deeming it to be acceptable. This is just outrageous, isn't it? Those caught and convicted of drug driving can receive a minimum 1-year driving ban, up to 6 months in prison, an unlimited fine, and more. Their licence will carry an endorsement for 11 years. So it's not a good idea to get caught doing this, or indeed do it. So we're talking about more than cannabis here. This is Class A drugs. Just wonder what your thought was on that, and whether this is just something that's peculiar to the southeast. Have you noticed that smell, that the very distinctive smell of cannabis as well when you're driving along? I don't know how you know whether they're on Class A drugs, but interested in your views in the comments below on whether you think that's something we should be worried about. Next up, this is in Talking Point, the letters page. This comes from David Webb from Romford, and it's titled Triumph Slick Shifter. Regarding the letter about Jawa being first with clever gearboxes, in 1966 I had a 1958 650cc Triumph Thunderbird with what was called a slick shift gearbox. When changing gear, the clutch disengaged. With practice, you could engage first gear and pull away using the gear lever to engage the clutch. Triumph had this system more than 65 years ago. Now, I just thought that was worth highlighting because I put a video up pretty recently about Honda's new, can't remember what it's called now, but it was on the CBR 650 that I rode, and it was just brilliant. You know, basically, there was a clutch lever, you lifted the clutch lever, and it changed gear without you having to engage the clutch, even when you came to a stop. If you've not seen that video yet, go and check that out. It's a brilliant bit of technology. It doesn't cost much money, and if you like quick shifters on bikes, then this what gave you all the advantages of a quick shifter, but cost a lot less and meant you could come to a stop without bothering touching the clutch. And the really good thing about it, I thought, was if you wanted, you could just use the clutch as normal. The clutch always overrid what you were doing without the clutch. So anyway, clever stuff, but it's nothing's new, is it, in motorcycling? Turns out Triumph had something similar 65 years ago. So thank you to David Webb for drawing our attention to that. And it wasn't just Triumph either. I had a number of comments on that video of other people that said they had similar systems on older bikes. So yeah, I get that. So there we go, as I say, nothing new is there in motorcycling. Right, moving on to this one. Sexy, sporty and sophisticated, and there's this big old picture here of the new XSR900 GP from Yamaha, a bike that I've got at the moment actually, and I published a video a week or so back which has done pretty well on my first ride on this bike. Now the reason that the headline here says sexy, sporty and sophisticated. Now I have to say, I've never found any motorcycle, car or anything else that's sexy, so that's a word I would never use in conjunction with bikes, but there we go, I know some people do. And I have to say, when I first saw this bike, I thought it was absolutely fugly, and it is pretty bulbous looking, but when you see it in the flesh, it ain't as bad as you might think, so give it a chance is all I'm saying. That first video I put up really split opinions on the looks of the bike. I was really quite surprised because basically half of the people that commented said they absolutely loved it and half thought it was absolutely hideous. I've completely changed my mind about it. Started off in the latter camp, thought it was hideous, but actually once you see it, it's actually really quite a nice thing. Anyway, let's see what MCN said here about the verdict and see if they concur with my finding after my first ride. It's not often that a machine stirs up feverish levels of emotion and excitement in bikers of all ages, yet that's exactly what Yamaha managed to do when they pulled the covers off their mesmerisingly beautiful XSR900 GP, a proper nod to the golden age of biking. Now I wouldn't call it mesmerisingly beautiful, and I know 50% of you wouldn't either. I think part of the issue is I do love a retro bike, me, but it depends what works for you, doesn't it? I hark back, well, the retro bikes I like are the ones that look like bikes from the sort of 70s. This is more 80s, 90s sports bike. I wasn't really into bikes then and wasn't really paying attention, so that's why it doesn't tug on my retro heartstrings. Whereas bikes in like the 70s remind me of the sort of bikes that my dad might have been riding, or the big boys at the local playing field, although they were in reality probably on fizzies, but they remind me of those sort of bikes, whereas this doesn't remind me of anything, so I just take it on face value. Anyway, I have ridden it. I've got, as I say, that one video up already. I've got another more in-depth one coming. The verdict here from Carl Stevens, he says, it's beautiful, capable and packed with tech, but bear in mind that the riding position is more aggressive than those high bars would lead you to believe, especially if you're on the smaller end of the spectrum. Now I actually concur with Carl on this, other than, I'm not sure, well I would say it's beautiful actually. It does, there's something about it when you're around the bike and you ride it that's just sort of special. And there aren't that many bikes that do that for you either, that make you feel special to ride it. And I've ridden this out and about and people have come up to me to talk about the bike. It is very unusual. So it definitely ticks the special tag, and it does give you a grin sort of on your face behind the helmet when you're riding the thing. But I wouldn't call it beautiful. It's not Panigale 899 beautiful, let's put it that way. But anyway, yeah, I found basically it's just the riding position. It doesn't look that terrible, but I just found it too risky, and after about an hour it does get uncomfortable. But more about that in my in-depth review that will be coming up soon. Stick around for Parish notices at the end of the video, by the way, and I shall go through all the videos that are coming up on the channel in the next month if you're interested. Alright, last story in this paper. Indian deliver on Scout's promise. Sporty new 101 tops radically revamped and competitively priced cruiser range. It says here, Indian's new generation 2024 Scout range is topped by the £16,095 101 Scout, and it's a worthy tribute to the late 20s original. It was one of the most revered performance bikes of its time, and the new 2024 version has the kind of fire in its belly you'd never expect from a cruiser. Sitting on plush, beautifully controlled, fully adjustable suspension, the 101 floats from corner to corner with the consummate ease of a well-sorted sports bike. Steering is light and precise, and it's easy to forget you're on an American cruiser when the 101 is this good. So quite high praise indeed, and I think this is Neevesy riding this. We'll get to the verdict in a minute. I just wanted to say, I mean, I've mentioned before, I do like retro bikes. I'm not a massive cruiser fan, but this kind of bridges the gap a bit. I do kind of like the little bikini fairing on here. I did ride one of these Indians from a year or two ago back at Crazy Horse. I think it was called the Indian Scout Sport, something like that. And I was saying, how can one of these bikes be sporty? But actually, it did feel quite sporty. So I'm willing to suspend disbelief and assume that actually this probably does feel pretty good when you ride it. Maybe I'll get a go on one day. Let's see what the verdict was. And yes, it was indeed Nevesy, my favourite MCN road tester, riding this. He said, it's a superb machine. Indian's new 101 Scout offers sublime mix of performance, sharp handling, strong brakes and tech with American flair. It'll lap up a spirited Sunday scratch, glide through town while you admire your reflection in shop windows. Who hasn't done that? And wow you with its glossy paintwork, attention to detail, tech and quality components. It isn't cheap, but you'll never feel short-changed. Well, that's a pretty glowing review, isn't it? It's £16,095, so yeah, it's not cheap, but it does look the biz. If you're going to have a cruiser, I just think have an American one, because that's, unless it's a Triumph, I'll maybe make an exception for them. But in the main, it's got to be a Harley or an Indian or Triumph, I think, otherwise forget it. And there are some nice touches here. I do like the overall look. I do like the bikini fairing, as I said. It looks good in this red colour, and I really like the dial with the TFT on it. I think they've done a top job on that. Alrighty, there we go. That's the end of the first paper. What have we got on the next one? Right, next up, boxing even cleverer. There's quite a bit about new gearboxes in bike news this month. BMW reveal automatic gearbox prototype fitted to the R1300 GS. Now, a lot of you commented about this when I put up that video on the Honda with the what's it clutch that I can't remember the name of. Let me just look it up, hang on. Right, just looked up E-clutch. That was what I was forgetting. They're calling it the E-clutch, the Hondas, aren't they? Anyway, BMW turns out to have a similar system at a similar time. So let me see what it says here. BMW revealed the gearbox prototype fitted to an R1300 GS. BMW are looking to revolution the way we change gear by creating a new automatic transmission dubbed Automated Shift Assistant, or ASA, offering both a manual and full auto setting. So that sounds kind of similar to the E-clutch, doesn't it? The system is essentially a computer-controlled conventional motorcycle transmission with electrical actuators working with the clutch to pull away and stop and shift the gear ratios, which is pretty much what the Honda one does as well. We asked project manager Rainer Fings about the lack of a clutch lever. He said, we had an electric clutch lever when we started, whereas the Honda E-clutch actually has a real clutch lever. He said, but the more we rode it, the less it made sense, so we threw it away. So that's interesting. So this has no clutch lever. There's a little picture of a clutchless handlebar on an R1300 GS here. But it says here, foot lever does remain, but with no physical link to the gear change mechanism. It's just effectively an electronic switch you actuate with your foot. So slightly different from the way Honda have implemented theirs. Be very interesting to see how this feels when you ride it. I did quite like the fact that with the Honda you could resort to the clutch if you wanted to, and I love the fact it was only like 100 quid more for the bike with the E-clutch than it was without. I bet you this system is a bit more expensive on the BMW, but we'll wait and see. Yeah, so, I mean, one of the complaints that people always have, particularly on boxer engine bikes, is that the gear change is very clunky, isn't it? So if this makes it smoother, I can see why BMW might want to go there. Again, interested in your views in the comments below as to whether you think we want to get rid of clutches and we want to actually ride bikes with semi-auto or automatic gearboxes. In some cases it makes sense. I've got a DCT, of course, on my Goldwing, my big touring comfortable bike. It's a bike you just want to lay back and relax on as you ride, and for me DCT makes absolute sense in that application. I'm not quite so sure I want it on my GS though. I don't know, particularly if you're going to go off-road. I know many of us don't go off-road on the GS, certainly I don't, but you can see why off-roaders might be a little bit anti this, I don't know. But anyway, interested in your views again on that one in the comments below. Right, next story, Triumph Play Dirty. Now this is a bike we just haven't heard much about, isn't it? We mentioned it in bike news probably about a year ago that Triumph were developing this new proper sports enduro bike, and it is out there now and apparently it's doing great things. Let's see what it says here. Triumph's new TF250X is a bold step into the unknown, but what's it like? Well, let's find out. Triumph may be a household name when it comes to road bikes, but this is the first time they've put the name to a competition motocross machine and a competition machine that they built from scratch. Triumph claim 104 kilograms as a wet weight figure. What a breath of fresh air that would be, wouldn't it, on a bike? But it feels lighter, wow, and can be picked off the stand and moved around like a toy. It's truly minimal with no dash, no ignition barrel, and no clutter. I'm liking the sound of this, if only I was an off-roader. The new 249.5cc single is ferociously torquey, which is what makes it so sweet to ride for someone with very limited off-road skills. Straight out the box, the new TF2 250X handles impressively well too. Not only is the riding position spacious yet neutral, but the instant feedback from the lightweight aluminium chassis is complemented by a sublime setup as standard from the KYB suspension. So they absolutely love it. Carl Stevens, giving his verdict, says, with the performance of the TF250X being so good, Triumph are making a serious statement and are shaking up the status quo in the off-road world. The TF is a superbly polished machine with a strong engine, effective chassis and sublime suspension setup. Triumph are onto a winner. So that's great news, isn't it? So that's another string to Triumph's bow. I'm very proud of Triumph as a British brand. I know they make bikes abroad, but the brand is British. So I'm really thrilled to see that. Sorry about that, folks. Minor technical issue. You remember how I was saying the other day in a video how great the Osmo Action 4 is? Which it absolutely is, I stand by that. It does turn out, if you leave them switched on and recording for a long time and you don't have air flowing over them, they do shut down and overheat. So what I've had to do is put a little fan pointing at the camera that you might be able to hear in action. Here's a little picture of it, my setup here. So hopefully it'll keep you nice and cool for the remainder of the video. So hopefully that background noise of the fan running isn't too distracting. Anyway, that's what that's all about. All right, next up, so that was the Triumph TF250X. What I was going to say was, wouldn't it be great if they could make a variant of this that was road legal, a bit like the CRF 300. I know it's a competition bike and it's going to be, it's going to need servicing every 50 hours and all that sort of thing, so it won't make sense. But if they made a road-based version of this bike, I think it would sell really well. Look how well the CRF 250 and the 300L did for Honda. I'm sure Triumph could do something similar in a bike styled like this, but with a more road-friendly engine. Anyway, there we go. So that was the Triumph. Next up, the best of both worlds. Proof that middleweight adventure bikes could be the best way forward. And I think maybe there is now a move for all of us to have slightly genuinely lighter bikes. I don't know. But here we go. We're pitting the BMW F900 GS Adventure against the Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro. And I picked this one out because I've just had the Triumph 900 Rally Pro in the garage for the last couple of weeks. Got a few videos in the can on that, so I know that bike pretty well at the moment. And I have ridden the F900 GS, but not in adventure form. So I'm quite intrigued to see which MCN preferred. Let's see what they say here. Who is this doing this? This is John Urry that's given this review. He says, BMW ticks all the boxes. Considering how much I love the updated Tiger 900 GT Pro, I can't help but feel disappointed and let down by the Rally Pro. I totally get the F900 GS Adventure. If you want a Tiger 900, I'd buy the GT Pro instead. And if you want a middleweight adventurer covering distance, the F900 GS Adventure will tick all your boxes. Although, to be honest, I would also pick the Tiger 900 GT Pro over either of them. So there we go. Go for the road focused bike is what John Urry says. But these bikes do make sense to me. Awful lot cheaper than their big brothers as well. If you look at the Triumph 1200 or indeed, of course, the BMW GS 1300, they're way more expensive. The BMW F900 GS Adventures comes in at £14,690, and the Triumph Tiger 900 Rally Pro with all the gizmos, 14,495. So they're both under 15 grand. Quite a lot of bike for the money. They're given the GS though 4 out of 5 and the Triumph 3 out of 5. So not a glowing endorsement for the Triumph, but yeah, stick around and stay tuned to the channel if you want to know more about that bike, because there's more of that coming up soon. All right, hope this noise of the fan isn't too intrusive. I might try turning it off in a minute and see how long the camera lasts. Alrighty, next up, last one in this paper then. New Triumph Rocket 3 Storm packs more torque than any production bike, but is it too much of a good thing? Now, I do love the Triumph. I mentioned just now that if you're going to have a cruiser, make sure it's an American one, but with the exception of Triumph. And of course, the Triumph Rocket 3 is one of those brilliant exceptions. It's just one of those nuts bikes that I love the fact that it exists, and it's had loads of upgrades, including a bit more oomph. Now, if there was a bike on the market that didn't need more oomph, it's probably this one, but Triumph are giving it a go. So it says here, Triumph have added a new engine map that boosts the power to 180 brake horsepower at 7,000 RPM. I mean, it's just a nuts bike, this, isn't it? It looks brilliant. It looks like, like a Hot Wheels toy of the 70s would look of a big muscle bike. I absolutely love that Triumph have done this. It looks good. Not sure, I mean, it's not really a bike that I would own, because without having some sort of a reverse gear, which I don't think this has, certainly the old one didn't, I'm pretty sure it hasn't, it would be really hard to move around. It's one of those bikes you have to sit on to move around, I think, because it's so flipping heavy. But nuts bike, loads of torque, and it's even got even more power now. Would you like to see me review this on the channel? The last time I rode one of these was when it first came out. It must be 3 or 4 years ago now. It doesn't say on here, I don't think, when it came out. But it's had some upgrades. It's probably worth me getting one of these in for another look at some point. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see that. Let me turn the fan down a few notches, hang on. All right, next paper with the fan turned down a little bit. Let's see if that kills the noise but keeps the camera cool enough. We shall see. First up here, Stop the World. Brembo Hypure Calipers, or Hypure Calipers. I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but very clever play on words here. Hypure. Hypure Calipers promise a revolution in power and weight. So Brembo, I think, that are the market leaders in bikes, in bike braking. They've had the Stylemas that have been, in my mind, the market leaders before. They've now come out with some new market leaders called the Hypure. Says here, Brembo Hypure Calipers promise a revolution in power and weight. Brembo have devised a new performance-oriented set of calipers called the Hypure that are built to both be 10% lighter and more efficient than market leaders. Now, I don't know who the market leaders are they're referring to here, because I would have thought that was Brembo and the Stylemas. It's MCN have been confirmed to MCN that they will debut as an OE fitment on an as yet unnamed performance bike this year. So presumably that's going to be a sports bike, I don't know. Alongside being lighter, that they also said they are also said to reduce the amount of pad wear, meaning less frequent changes and better green credentials, because of course brake pads are very ungreen, as we know from the materials they're made from. But anyway, yeah, we'll see what they turn up to be. It says they're 10% lighter than Stylemas. Designed to improve handling on high-end sports bikes, so I'm sure we'll be seeing them on a sports bike soon, and then probably it'll filter down to the rest of the fleet, just like the Stylemas have. I mean, frankly, if you have a bike with any Brembo caliper on, they seem to work pretty well, don't they? But we shall see those soon, I'm sure. Next up, little beauties. Who needs a big bike when these A2 legal offerings are so good? And I couldn't agree more. I keep being asked when I'm going to ride the Triumph Speed 400. It is in the diary. It's been scheduled with Triumph. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it until for some time. It's about, I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but I think it's July or August when I get the bike. So you may not see it until late August, September on the channel. I know I'm going to love it. I know they're already out there and people are buying them. But I did have a sort of a first look at these back in sort of around Christmas time. I'll put a link to that video if you haven't seen it in the corner, where I had a look at both this and the off-road version. They do look beautiful in the flesh. Cannot wait to ride them. So for me, I'm not surprised if the Triumph doesn't absolutely wipe the floor with this. And I know they've been really good sellers as well. More of that in a minute. So they're pitting it against the Royal Enfield Hunter 350, or HNTR 350 that we have to call it in this country, which was a bike I really love, but it's got like half the power of the Triumph. Okay, it's cheaper, to the tune of about £1,000, which is a lot of money in this class of bike, when the Triumph itself is less than £5,000. But yeah, so there we go, that's the Hunter. And then they're pitting it against Husqvarna Vitpilen 401, which is £5,599, so the most expensive of the lot. But personally, I don't like the way the Husky looks. A number of people have asked me when am I going to review that. Well, I have no plans to, because I just don't like the look of it. And I've decided that from now on I'm only going to review bikes that I'm interested in myself. And I have to say this Triumph really does pique my interest. So let's see what the verdict was from John Arry again. He's ridden them all. They gave the Triumph 5 out of 5. They gave the Royal Enfield 3 out of 5. And Husqvarna 4 out of 5. So that's like Triumph first by the looks of it. So let's see what he said. The Hunter is affordable and looks the part, but is too slow for anything other than urban use. The Husky's quirky styling won't appeal to everyone, me included. The level of tech is highly impressive and arguably is over the top for a 400. The Triumph is the one that would get our money. Classically good looking and with a real beauty of an engine that is more relaxed to ride and sounds great. The Speed 400 is a very, very hard to fault. And I believe it has been selling like hot cakes. I think we're going to get some of that in the final paper. So let's one more story in here and then we'll get on to that. Honda bridged the tech gap. New Honda Africa Twin gains upgraded DCT and semi-active suspension for 2024. I must say the Honda Africa Twin over time it has been growing on me. It's always been a lovely bike to ride, but it's always downside for me has always been it's been very, very tall, particularly in in the I can't remember what it's called now, XT Africa Twin Adventure Sport AS. In the AS format, it was very tall. It's got a bit shorter now, a bit less tall, so that's good. And also, I always found these switchgear very fiddly. The electronics a bit odd to deal with. But as time has gone on, I've come to appreciate the Africa Twin, and I must admit the looks of it are starting to really appeal to me now. And this latest incarnation looks really good. I did ride it recently for a very brief period, and I have to say I was pretty impressed with it. Although I found the DCT a little bit odd. It felt like the clutch was slipping at low RPM, but that was just based on a very short ride. Anyway, let's see what it says here. For 2024, you can now buy an Africa Twin with Shower's EERA forks, presumably that is, alongside an upgrade motor and refined DCT. Shower's EERA system features semi-active damping. Okay, it's the electronic suspension. Semi-active damping at both ends with preload also electronically controlled. Honda have refined the DCT system to a point where even riders who are used to a manual gearbox may well want to give it a go. It's got a new 5-stage adjustable screen. Panels around the seat have been extended. There's less plastic surrounding the screen. Honda claim to have increased peak torque by 7% and boosted low and mid-range drive, which is where you want it on the road, isn't it? And indeed, if you're off-roading. Unlike previous Africa Twins, the 2024 bike now runs tubeless tyres, a definite plus, again, for off-roading, no messing about with inner tubes. So John Ari here says, better but expensive. At nearly $16,000 for a DCT ES model, you're in BMW R1300 GS or Triumph Tiger 900 models with changed territory, which are both better models. I would argue about that. Number one, I'd say you wouldn't get a BMW R13 GS for 16k because that would be the basic model, and I just don't think they ever sell those. In reality, the 1300 GS, you're talking 20k plus by the time you spec it up, so it's an odd thing to compare it with. The Triumph Tiger 900 says here, arguably a better bike. I'm not so sure. I do like the Africa Twin. I think it's kind of coming of age, and I imagine it will soon come with that new E-clutch as well, if you want it, because I would expect to see Honda rolling that out across their range pretty soon. Anyway, John likes it, and at $15,899, a lot of bike for the money, I think. Right, final paper before we get on to Parish notices, which are over there somewhere. Right, new date for petrol ban. This is more good news. We talked about the 20-mile-an-hour ban being lifted in Wales. Well, another thing's happened. Well, it's a rumour that was in, I think, a Daily Telegraph newspaper article. It says here, rumour points to 2040 cut-off as industry awaits announcement. Bike industry bosses are waiting for official word from ministers that the new conventional petrol engine bikes will be banned from 2040. Previous indications had been it would be 2030 for small bikes and 2040 for the rest. So it looks like that whole we must move to electric or some other form of motive power is moving back, which is good news, but it is just a rumour at this point, waiting for it to be confirmed. But that would be good, wouldn't it, if we hear that. By the time we get to 2040, I think I'll be 72, so I'm probably, well, I'll just make do with second-hand petrol bikes at that point. Good news there. Right, next story here. This is the point I was mentioning about the Speed 400 from Trump. Speed 400 is a hit. April's new motorcycle sales, this is very interesting, this. April's new motorcycle sales are 1.1% higher overall than they were in April 2023. However, the 125 to 500cc bracket saw biggest growth with an 18.8% rise, a massive rise. And the new Trump Speed 400 is already the most popular machine in this class. So that 20% rise almost in the smaller engine bike class is all driven by the Trump. So they're absolutely doing well there and selling like hotcakes. Those, I knew they would, and they absolutely are. And this is the interesting thing for me though about the figures. BMW's R1250 GS Adventure held its top spot as the UK's most popular geared motorcycle. Now why is that interesting? Well, it's because it's the 1250 Adventure that's selling more than the 1300 GS, the bike that I recently put a video up last Wednesday. You may have seen I put a video up saying that I won't be buying a GS anytime soon. It got massive views, loads of comments, and although there are obviously fans of that bike out there and people that have bought them and love them, and they're absolutely welcome to do that, after 6 months with the bike, I said I wouldn't be buying one anytime soon, and I'm waiting to see what the new, in quotes, Adventure is going to look like, because the rumour has it the new bigger version of that bike is going to be much more kind of beefy, rhinoceros-like we expect from a GS. So I can't wait to see that coming out, and I'm hoping, because there's been a few recalls on the existing R1300 GS as well, that BMW are taking their time to assess some of the feedback from that bike and hopefully roll it into the new GS 1400, I think it's going to be called, but we'll probably know it in our minds as the Adventure version of the bike. But yeah, there's a lot hanging on that, a lot of people waiting to see what is that bike going to look like. Is it going to have that distinctive front end with the starred headlight that the R1300 GS has? I don't have a problem with the headlight, it's the radar blanking plates that I don't like. But anyway, cannot wait to see what the new Adventure is going to look like. But at the moment, they're outselling, the outgoing Adventure is outselling the incoming R1300 GS. Very interesting that. And is that does that mean people are thinking like I was in that video, and that BMW have missed the spot with the design of that bike? I don't know. Anyway, we shall see. Right, next up, your This is interesting. This is a ride, actually. I don't often show you rides that MCN put out, but they do in all their papers. They always put out some routes that you can try out. And this time, Nevesy has been trying a day trip across the channel to ride to Le Touquet, which is somewhere that if you've never been, is well worth visiting. It's pretty close to the exit to the Channel Tunnel, and if you live in the southeast, you could do it in a day. It's special to me because Le Touquet also has an airfield, and every private pilot in the UK, if they want to experience flying to France, they usually go to Le Touquet first because it's a very easy spot to fly to, and also it's the smallest channel crossing. It's literally like I think it's about 21 miles or something across the channel at that point, so you're not out the sight of land for very long. And it is a lovely place. There's some great seafood restaurants there. If you like moule frite, then definitely go there. But also, if you want to go on a bike, it's a lovely ride from the Channel Tunnel down the coastal road to Le Touquet. Anyway, let's see what Nevesy says. He says, if you fancy breaking your continental riding duck or have limited time for a big trip, the run from Calais to Le Touquet is perfect, and I agree. If you live in the southeast, you can easily do it in a long day. It's scenic all the way, and if you do a dawn raid to get an early Eurotunnel crossing, there'll be time for a stop for a coffee and a pain au chocolat in Wimereux and be in Le Touquet by lunchtime. But the best bits are the winding roads themselves, especially the mini Alps stretch from Cap Blanc-Nez to Escale, complete with its Tour de France tarmac graffiti. If you've never experienced Le Touquet before, or you've never ridden a motorcycle overseas, it's a definite great start. I recommend actually do an overnighter, stay in Le Touquet for the night. It's a lovely hotel called the Hotel Westminster that we stay there. It's a lovely place, and Le Touquet you can wander about. Lots of restaurants, as I say, nice beach, very windy. It always seems to be there. But yeah, an excellent biking destination, I think, for a long weekend if you want to. All right, moving on. Final story in the paper before we move on to Parish notices. Knockout punch. Can BMW's new Boxer Cruiser outperform benchmark Harley-Davidson on UK roads? So this is the new BMW R12, priced at just under 12 grand against the Harley-Davidson Nightster Special, which is 14.5 grand. So more expensive, probably paying for the Harley-Davidson kudos here. I recently rode the R12, haven't ridden the Nightster yet, but I'd like to. Let's see what the verdict is. I actually like the R12. I thought riding-wise, it was really good, even better than the R12 9T version of the bike, and it's slightly cheaper than that. Phil West says here, the world's changed. The point of this test was to find out whether BMW's new R12 was a credible cruiser and what you get for your money. On face value, the Harley Nightster Special is the definitive cruiser benchmark. Trouble is, it's lost its definitive looks. It needs revs to pump out that power. Its build quality isn't brilliant, and it's constructed in Thailand, so you're not actually getting a US bike. I have no problem with bikes built in Thailand, but I get Harley-Davidson's and the US thing. But the R12 is no true cruiser either. Instead, it's a slightly more laid-back R12 9T, and as a result, is a far better bike dynamically. I agree. I think it rides better than the more expensive R12 9T. It's got potential for customising, yet with a badge that still won't convince the conventional cruiser crowd. Me, I'll go for the base version of the R12 in black for 11,990. Interesting. I do think the Harley does look quite nice actually, and I will try and get myself a go on one of these at some point. I've got a packed full diary. There's so many good bikes that I want to ride, but I'll add that to the list. I do like the look of the TFT. I love the fact they put it in an actual dial to give it a more retro look, whereas the TFT on the R12 just doesn't look right, I don't think, on a sort of a retro cruiser. You can get optionally the dials as well, but interesting. All right, anyway, that's it for the paper review then. Let's get on to Parish notices, shall we? All right, quickly give you a bit of news about what's coming up. First off, last call for the ABR Festival. If you haven't got your tickets already for what is, I think, the best bike festival in the, well, it's the only bike festival, isn't it? But the best bike show in the year, in the summer. It's on the 28th to the 30th of June. I've got the t-shirt and everything. I shall be there presenting a couple of slots, but basically there enjoying the whole atmosphere, enjoying the friendly nature of the show, enjoying the music, enjoying all the bikes that you can ride, and just meeting up with old pals. It's everybody who's anyone will be there. If you've not got your tickets already and you've got a free weekend, come along, use TMF5 for a 5% discount. But as I say, tickets are selling out fast, so grab one while you can if you fancy the ABR Festival. I look forward to seeing you there. Next up, I wanted to get your view on, did you see my integrated advert that I put out in the video that I did about the Yamaha GP, you know, the fared sports bike we talked about earlier. Because I did a different sort of advert there. It's for Car Vertical. It's a sort of advert that gets on my nerves when they're in the middle of videos, but I tried to make it obvious it was an advert by doing end of part 1 and part 2, so it was easy for you to skip if you wanted. And I did get a little bit of negative feedback, but nowhere near as much as I expected to get. So I potentially could do a few more of those if I want to. They are quite good for the channel in terms of they do bring in extra revenue. I haven't agreed with Car Vertical whether I'm going to do more or not, but I'd be interested in your view. Did you really hate me doing that, or is it something you could put up with in the future? Whatever happens, I won't be doing loads and loads. We're talking maybe maximum 2 videos a month. So if I'm putting out 8 to 10 videos a month, which is my normal sort of cadence, you'll only see it in 1 or 2 videos. So hopefully you can put up with that. But I just want to get your feedback in the comments below, what you thought of that, whether you thought that was too intrusive or not. In terms of what's coming up on the channel, the next video on Saturday, June the 1st, is my living with video on the XSR900 GP, in depth on that bike. You know, what's it like to ride in the rain, at night on motorways, all that sort of stuff. My usual in-depth treatment, that's coming up in the next video. Then it's my first ride of the brilliant, Suzuki GSX8R, which is a sort of race version of the GSXS8S, which I really liked. That's coming up after that. Then it's a welcome return, I hope, to Kit Corner. I'm going to take you through what I think to my Rucker Nirvana 2 riding jacket, a review of that. I've had that for 2 years. It's been all around the world with me, Japan, Alaska, all over the place. Hot weather, cold weather, you name it. It's an expensive bit of kit, but after 2 years and probably 20 or 30,000 miles, I think I'm in a good position to review that. So that one's coming up. Then it's my first ride of the Yamaha MT-09. What a bike that is. Everybody's saying good things about it, and I'm afraid I do too. It's a brilliant bike, that. Garage Talk, they always do well, coming out on the 15th of June. That's the videos when I take you around my garage, look at all my bikes and tell you the things that I've done on those, because you don't always get to see them on the channel very much because I'm riding lots of other bikes. Then on the 19th June, I've got the new Himalayan review from Royal Enfield. Looking forward to bringing you that. I've got an in-depth on the MT-09. Again, I think that'll be probably quite a popular video again, where I'm riding it in all sorts of conditions on all sorts of roads. And then the next bike news is going to be on the 26th of June, so put that in your diary if you like. Plus, there's going to be 1 or 2 bonus videos as well through the month. All right, that's it for this time. I'm glad the camera held up on the low fan noise. I must find a way of getting around that. It's still feeling a little bit warm, but seems to have held out for the second part. But anyway, I hope you enjoy that. Do stay tuned to the channel, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Until then, this has been the Mist and Flyer. Cheerio.
Hey kids, we're the Mist and the Flyers.